Hello and welcome to the Bundesliga Show, the predictions part of the Doppelpack this evening. We've got a double header for you. You've already seen the fantasy show for match week 18, and now we're here for the predictions for the first week of the Rückrunde. It's incredible, really, isn't it? Obviously, we've already had these brilliant midweek fixtures as well, and now we're already onto the third match week, technically, of 2026. So the season really starting to hot up now. We can kind of analyze how the teams have done over the Hinrunde, can't we? And obviously look forward to this Rückrunde. So yeah, obviously, as you can see, I'm joined again by Ultan, who's done brilliantly well to do this Doppelpack tonight. He's got it all in for us today. How are you doing, Ultan? And are you looking forward to the Rückrunde?
Yeah, can't complain. Just glad the Bundesliga is back and nice to be back on with you. Plenty of interesting games this weekend to look forward to. So we'll see how they unfold.
Yeah, that's true. Hopefully we can do better than last time we were on together. Yeah, I think we got. I seem to remember that was the weekend there were like tons of shocks as well, wasn't it? I think it was match week. Was it 14 or 13 or 14? I think it was, but I seem to remember both of us kind of hashed it up a bit. But yeah, let's hope that we can perform a little bit better tonight. Anyway. So yeah, let's have a little look. So obviously we are sponsored. The show is sponsored this evening by Covert Footy Trips, the fantastic company run by Rich over in Norwich in England. Book your football trips. You travel. He sends people to Germany, the top division, the second division, the third division, and also over to Italy as well. He does a lot of trips to the likes of Como, Rome, Lazio. He's got it all prepared for you if you want to get your football trips in over the next year. And then obviously the fantastic bully news as well, Runa's brilliant English language site that Ultan obviously also writes for as well. So yeah, okay guys, so let's get stuck in then. Obviously there is a match underway at the moment as well. There is Augsburg versus Union. So maybe if you're lucky, we'll keep you updated on the score in that one as well. Yeah, a couple of people already checking in, which is good. Obviously, Rory obviously just finished his fantasy show with a well-deserved break. Have a good one, lads. And Viva VFB, definitely, obviously, a happy man enjoying his team, winning a lot of games of football at the moment. So yeah, let's start, Ultan. I mean, we've got a Friday night game, which is quite a good-looking fixture as well on the curtain raiser for match for the Rückrunde, really, which is obviously Werder Bremen versus Frankfurt. So as our guest today, I'm going to let you kick off with this one, Ultan. So what are you thinking for this one?
Yeah, you took the words straight out of my mouth there. I think the last time we were on a kind of a pretty dry run of terrible Friday night games, but they're looking pretty tasty now since that passed. I think it was a Union beating Leipzig 3-1 at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, this looks like a really interesting game, and even from like an off the pitch point of view, it looks quite fascinating. I mean, there was rumors today from Deichstube, the Werder Bremen news source, and that there's been kind of consternation and unrest in the Bremen camp. Players getting fed up with Horst Stevens football, and just the likes of Bittencourt being left out in Dortmund and whatnot, whereas the likes of Skelly Alvaro, who's expected to leave the club soon, was on the bench. I think it all looks a bit pear-shaped from their point of view. Obviously, the postponement of their first game, and then they put up a decent show against Dortmund for about 65 minutes, but it all kind of crumbled to nothing in the end when Dortmund subs came on. So it's a really interestingly poised game. And then Frankfurt, who continue to create chances aplenty, but seem to have no control of games. the path continues since the start of the season, where you can be involved in a game and win a game 5-1 and lose a game 5-1. You just don't really know which way it's going to go from a Frankfurt perspective. So it should be a really interesting Friday night game. I think the likes of like Kau Santos has to kind of step up to the plate now for Frankfurt. He's had a few shaky moments in the last two games, to say the least. And if he can kind of bring a bit of stability and composure to the back line, it'd help them tenfold. The likes of Mario Götze and Ebnu Talib are already ruled out, which is a bit of a blow, but Calimendo was quite impressive in his cameo against Dortmund, and I think he could do pretty well. And Kanazun and Faris Chaibi seems to be back from AFCON as well. For that reason, and just the kind of trouble that's going on at Bremen at the moment, or so it seems, I've gone for a 3-1 away win for Frankfurt. I just think their attackers will make the difference, whereas Bremen looked fairly blunt on Friday night or against Dortmund midweek.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much wherever Frankfurt go, it's a good game of football, isn't it? I mean, obviously, we've already seen them in 2026. They've had that amazing 3-3 draw with Dortmund, which I'm sure had you a little bit almost having a heart attack, really, on Friday night, which they obviously managed to throw away despite scoring what looked like a 92nd minute winner, which is typical Frankfurt, basically, this season. You're just thinking they've got a great win there, and they throw it away right at the death. And then they did the same against Stuttgart a few days later as well. They got what looked like an equalizer with 10 minutes to go. You're just thinking, stick in there, get a good point. And then they go and concede another 88th minute goal. So unfortunately, that's the way things are going. They've conceded 36 goals in just 17 matches, which is horrendous for a team that are chasing Champions League and are obviously participating in the Champions League as well. So it's definitely a Jekyll and Hyde team. They're very good going forward, as you say. I mean, I've been impressed with Ebnu Talib as well. I think he's looked really good, the signing from Elversberg. He looked really good against Dortmund and did pretty okay against Stuttgart as well. But the issues at the back, as you say, with the goalkeeper, that obviously changed 4 times this season already between Zetterer and Cao Santos, and neither of them have looked anywhere near good enough at times. Obviously, Robin Koch has always got a mistake in him. Teat, for as good as he is bringing the ball out, I often find him a little bit too emotional, and he's not very good under pressure. And he's the kind of experienced head you're looking to kind of balance games, but he's just not providing it this season. Obviously, the midfield is a little bit, what would you say? It's very attack-minded as well. Obviously, Larson is very attack-minded in that midfield. Hopefully, Shaqiri could be back for this game. If he's back, I think he could provide a little bit more stability to that back line. But they are conceding too many. As you say, for Bremen, just nothing's going right for them, really. They just look a poor side this season. Obviously, the kind of farce of Victor Boniface, really, the disastrous signing that's turned out to be. And as you say, he's not getting the right team out on the pitch. Half of the players look like they don't want to be there. Probably with the exception of Romano Schmid, they just don't have any kind of consistency at that club whatsoever. But having said that, I think we will see a good game. I think, Bremen do have potential going forward, especially against this very, very shaky Frankfurt back line. So I've actually scheduled in a 2-2 draw for this one. I think we should see another good Friday night game, which is continuing the trend from recent weeks, which is great to see. And I think we'll have another good Friday night game involving Frankfurt, and it's going to end even with a 2-2 draw, this one, for me. So let's move on to a very big program on Saturday as well. We've got a lot of Halbvier kickoffs, which will make German traditionalists very happy looking at that fixture list. Starting with your boys, Ultan. I mean, obviously, we've got Dortmund, St. Pauli. So go on, I'll let you lead out for your boys as well.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. You could say that maybe Dortmund's game in midweek and this one are quite favourable, maybe compared to a lot of teams in a fairly condensed week Englische Woche schedule. But it should be a fairly straightforward win, I would like to say and hope, without being too biased. They weren't fantastic against Bremen in the first half, and there were audible boos around the Westfalenstadion at halftime, which is quite uncommon for a team leading at 1-0 at the break. But it's kind of a sign of the times and just how kind of almost depressing football has been in black and yellow over the whole season, really. It's interesting to note that when I saw the result going in and it was 3-0, I was reporting on this game too. I thought like that must be the biggest winning margin for quite some time in the Bundesliga, and it actually is, believe it or not, all the way back till mid-August when they bet Union Berlin 3-0 as well. So it kind of shows you just the kind of level of lack of attacking output Dortmund have shown under Kovac, unfortunately, and maybe they've kind of hit their ceiling in that sense under him. But I do think they should have enough power and resource on the bench to see off St. Pauli here, who have been fairly dismal, to say the least. Blessing, for as difficult as his job is, it does seem like he's a bit of a dead man walking. They may not go and sack him anytime soon, and I don't think they will, because they're still in touching distance of safety. But, time is short in the Bundesliga, especially for teams like that don't have a whole pile of resources. So unless they can turn it around and bring some sort of attacking output to their game as well, I can't really see anything other than a 3-0 Dortmund win. Usually I've been going 2-0 every time Dortmund have played and just kind of muscling the other teams out of it. But I think this time it should be a little bit more convincing. It seems like the likes of Eric Schmid seem to be the biggest threat from a St. Pauli perspective, which is a bit worrying when it's your centre half kind of coming up the pitch and taking.
Yeah, you're not far from wrong there, Ultan, at all. I think good analysis on both teams. For Dortmund, it's just been such a weird season because Rory and I have mentioned it a lot in the review shows that it's just not a Dortmund team. For all the way back to like the mid 2000s, we've always known an attacking-minded Dortmund team with like world-class attackers. They might concede a lot of goals, but they've always had a guy that gets minimum 20, 25 goals a season, like pretty much every year that I can remember. And this year, it looks like no Dortmund player will get close to that, including Guirassy, to be honest, who's been pretty ordinary at times this season as well. I think it's tough because on one side you've got to say Kovac only one defeat in the Hinrunde. You can't complain about that. That was obviously against Bayern. Surprise. Obviously they just can't seem to impress the fans, which is understandable because, I mean, for me, whenever I see Dortmund on TV, I can stand them for maybe half an hour, but I just get bored, to be honest. And I watched them live, and it was one of the worst games of football I've seen in a long time, the one at Augsburg. I mean, it was just, I was falling asleep, literally. And it was only the pyro from the fans that kept me awake in that game.
The goal was a total fluke.
Yeah, it was. It really was. There were literally two chances in the whole game, one for each team, and that was it. But yeah, I mean, that's summed up Dortmund. Even the game against Hoffenheim a few weeks ago, I think we predicted on that one. That also ended up being a bit of a letdown as a spectacle as well. But one thing I will say about Dortmund, they seem to be quite good at stopping teams from playing. I think we've got to give them credit for that because teams don't play well against this Dortmund team. We've seen it. Hoffenheim have been in machines away from home and in general this season, but they didn't show up against Dortmund at all, did they, in that game? So I think that's one thing you've got to give credit for. I think the off-the-ball work and the kind of nitty-gritty is a lot better than what it looks on paper, really, because they don't lose many games, but at the same, they don't really concede many goals. Only 15 conceded in 17 games. That's very, very good for any team. Less than a goal per game ratio. So can't complain about that. And it's hard to see them not keeping another clean sheet in this game against, as you say, probably the worst attack in the league as far as I'm concerned. The strikers just don't score goals, do they? It's as simple as that. Kars, I think, did get a double before. He got a double against Heidenheim, didn't he? But he's not really kicked on. Right. The last two games, he's drawn blanks again. They've had an easier run as well. That's the worry for Pauli. They've had a few winnable games, but they've not really. They only beat Heidenheim, and that was it. They drew against Mainz, then lost against Wolfsburg. This is going to be a game too far for them, and I'm going to go for a 3-0 as well. I'm going to agree with you on this one all the time.
I think it's an interesting kind of time at Dortmund because it almost reminds me of the Terzic era where you kind of forfeit maybe the free-flowing football for results. And I know from being in the Irish Dortmund fan club, there's constant debates about, a top team can't play like this. But the point you made, which I forgot to touch on, like 1 defeat and 6 draws. Obviously, a few of the draws were maybe coughed up from winning positions, but 1 defeat, pretty good going. It's just the fact that Bayern are just runaway champions this year and they could easily go invincible. It's just which option do you choose, really?
Yeah, you are right. Yeah, I mean, they're going to get Champions League. They're probably going to finish second quite comfortably, but it's just not a pretty watch, is it? Which is not what you want, really, from a team that have a history of playing good football, really. I guess that's the issue. So let's move on to the next game. Wolfsburg-Heidenheim. What would you call this? Would you still call this a 6-pointer? I mean, Wolfsburg have kind of pulled away a bit, haven't they? They've gone up to 11th. They come into this game in 11th place with 18 points from 17 games. Heidenheim currently bottom. They prop up the division as we go into the second half of the season, but there's still a bit of optimism for the FC. I don't think they've been terribly bad. I mean, they played quite well against Koeln, where they scored 2 goals in that game. One of them a wonder strike as well from Pieringer. Who would have imagined Pieringer to score a goal like that? Obviously, after that, they were a bit disappointing against Mainz, but again, they did create chances and probably could have got a draw on another day from that match. So they were a little bit unlucky in that one. They come into this game against a side who struggle at home historically, although they have improved a little bit in recent times. They beat Union Berlin a month ago and then recently. Obviously, just this week, Pauli, in what was a pretty scrappy game, truth be told. But they have improved slightly at home. I've got a feeling that Heidenheim gets something out of this game. I still feel as though they're fighting. They're playing with a lot of strength in the team. They've not got much quality. We all know that, but I think the return of Kaufmann is going to give them something a bit extra. I think Ibrahimovic is starting to show a little bit of what he can do now. And they've always got that bit of magic. They tend to score at least one goal in most games at the moment, Heidenheim. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 here. But a lot of this is just because I can't see Wolfsburg backing that result up. I can't see them winning 2 games at home in a week. This is a game that maybe Heidenheim can even look at nicking a famous win, really, from this one. But I think they probably will run out as a 1-1 in this. Ultan?
Yeah, it's without doubt one of the hardest games of the week to call. So I totally share your sentiment towards picking a scoreline. I, however, have kind of stuck with the Atostad club. I'm going to go for a 2-1. I totally agree, though. It could go any way possible. Heidenheim could nick it. It could be a stalemate. But the one reason that's tipping me in the favour is Zenan Pecinovic. I just think he seems to be the man amongst the goals now. 5 in his last 3, as I mentioned on the fantasy show. He just seems to be in a hot streak, and even though they were fairly battered by Bayern Munich, he still managed to get a sneaky goal in there, which isn't too bad against the league's best defence. They also do have a little bit more options. You're talking about Heidenheim being strapped for options in terms of quality. Kaufmann coming back is pretty good, and I agree with you, Ibrahimovic. You'd hope, at least by the name alone, you'd offer something. And I think Leonidas Sturgiu is joining them as well from Stuttgart on loan, which isn't a bad coup, but I'm not sure he'll maybe make this weekend, which is probably a little bit of a blow. Heidenheim, I don't think they can really... I can really only see them threatening from set pieces, if they can maybe make set pieces count against the Wolfsburg defence that is clearly a little bit shaky and frail. They might have a chance, but I just think Wolfsburg might have enough muscle to get over the line with the likes of Eriksson and Wimmer, and even Dagim off the bench was pretty good last week, or midweek, I should say.
Yeah, there you go. So moving on to the game, which for me is the one that stands off the paper, probably after the top spiel, which we'll talk about later, is the game of the weekend, really. It's Hoffenheim, Leverkusen. Although I guess a lot of purists in Germany wouldn't agree with that one, and they'll probably boycott this match anyway, considering it's a game between SAP versus Bayern, effectively, as some would say. But from a football perspective, it's definitely a good-looking fixture, this. And what can you say about the TSG? I mean, they've been one of the teams of the season for me, and without doubt, the improved team of the season. I think they've been superb. The TSG Hoffenheim. I think a lot of credit has got to go to Christian Ilter and the backroom staff there, who have really formed a proper squad this year from what was a shambles of a squad last season, really, wasn't it? And so much credit has to go to a lot of the backroom staff. Also, the returning Aslani has helped a lot. He's been really good. But, I mean, they've got a return to form of Kramaric, who'd had a pretty wretched season last year. Obviously, he got yet another Bundesliga hat-trick midweek against Gladbach, didn't he? So it's there's just so much potential in this side. You've got Toure, who actually started on the bench midweek as well. He's going to be fit to go and run at this Leverkusen side. There's just endless. Lemperle has been a really good addition as well. I've really enjoyed him, the former Fürth and Cologne man. It just looks a really good side, and I thought that was a marquee win really over Gladbach, because I tipped a 2-2 draw in that one. And as for Leverkusen, it's been a bit of a weird start to 2026, hasn't it? Because obviously they got schooled at home against Stuttgart, and then they went all the way up to Hamburg before finding out the game was cancelled just an hour before kickoff, which was quite controversial in the Bundesrepublik, by the way. But they had to trek it all the way back down to Nord Rhine-Westphalia after not playing a game. So that's not exactly ideal build-up to this one, which is going to be a tough away game in Sinsheim. As for the prediction, it's a hard one, because I'm still a little bit reluctant to back Hoffenheim to go out there and win these kind of games. I don't know why, because maybe it's a little bit the crowd. The crowd, they're not the kind of side that really gets behind them. I'm not even sure it'll be a full stadium, to be honest, for this game, which is incredible to think, really, considering most Bundesliga games are sold out. But these company teams do sometimes struggle to sell out games, don't they? But I'm going to go for a real cracker, this one. I'm going to go for a cracker, a 3-3 draw. I think there's going to be goals galore in this one. I think it's going to be a great watch. I hope it's a full stadium, but I'm going to go for the 3-3 draw here. Ultan?
Yeah, funny enough, I'm kind of following suit. A little less on the goal side of things, but I'm going 2-2 for this game. I'm totally with you. It's a really interesting match. It's probably, in many ways, the most interesting match of the week, just given how strong Bayern are. I know we'll get onto that in a minute, but this is just like a perfect balance of two teams that are pretty much in contention for the Champions League. Leverkusen, it goes without saying, that's their ambition. But I think Hoffenheim can really visualize getting a Champions League place now too. If other teams slip up, they have a very, they have a puncher's chance of getting in there, maybe in 4th place or something. Yeah, and just a big shout out to Kramaric. Just what a player! He's Mr. Hoffenheim. I think he's become the most Bundesliga appearances from a Croatian player, and to do that with a hat trick, his 6th of his career for Hoffenheim is pretty impressive going. An incredible player to watch, and just hats off to him for sticking at it. And even though he looked like he wanted out last year, it kind of looks like he's settled down again and become a bit of a leader in a team. And to touch on your point about maybe why Hoffenheim struggle a bit, I think could be to do with experience. I'd also share that sentiment where when it comes to the big games, they've maybe kind of shirked out of them a little bit and kind of bullied the smaller teams. And maybe that's just to do with the kind of age profile. It's quite a young team by and large, with the exception of Kramaric and maybe Sopal and Baumann. So maybe that has an element to do with it. But yeah, I think it's going to be a shootout. I agree with you that Leverkusen's preparations have been just strung all over the place. I couldn't believe at halftime that it was 4-0 to Stuttgart at the start of the weekend. And the midweek game being cancelled, you could argue maybe allows you to save energy in your legs and avoid the lactic acid, or at the same time it could also mean unnecessary travel and more disruptions and a lack of game flow and kind of what would you say, keeping up to speed with everyone else.
Yeah, definitely. But I think this is definitely going to be one to watch for neutrals as well. I think it should be a great. Both teams are going to go all out for this one. It's one of those games that literally could be any score. It could be 5-1 either side. It could be 3-3, 2-2, 4-2. There should be goals. So that's one thing for sure. If you're a betting man, I'd be sticking goals on this one for sure. So let's move on. A game between two sides who, well, definitely the hosts are really starting to struggle to get a result, aren't they, unfortunately? They're now 8 games without a win, the FC Koeln. Against Mainz, who are now obviously 4 unbeaten, aren't they, under Urs Fischer, with 1 win, finally getting only the 2nd win of the season against Heidenheim midweek. But that kind of puts together a sequence of 6 points from 4 games, which is good going ultimately under Urs Fischer. And I think we all kind of thought the big man was going to kind of come good at Mainz, and so far it's been the case. This weekend they have another winnable game. They'll definitely fancy the chances at Koeln, who really kind of ran themselves into the ground in what was a good performance against Bayern. But as most teams do, they eventually fell up short and lost the game 3-1. So I think that plays into the hands of Mainz, actually. They also get an extra day's rest as well. Let's not forget they played Tuesday night. Mainz, I actually felt as though that was one of the worst performances under Fischer, actually, against Heidenheim. I thought they played better, way better against Union, which was a game they should have won, and they actually played really well in that game. They obviously played really well at Bayern as well to get that 2-2 draw. So they seem to be a bit better away from home. So this game kind of, for me, sets up quite well for them. I'll be honest, I am getting a little bit worried about Koeln. I don't think they're going to get relegated, but 8 games without a win is starting to get to the point where you're worrying a little bit. And this is a game that they really will target as a game that they have to win, this one, you know. But sadly, I don't think they're going to do it. And I was toying with an away win here. I was toying with Mainz to go there and win, but I still think they're struggling to get over the line in games. We saw it with the collapse against Union. We also saw it with what could have been a collapse against Heidenheim as well, from 2-0 up. So I've gone for a 1-1 here. I can see this being 1-0 to Mainz, still pretty late on, and then Koeln nicking a point in the last 10 minutes. But going for 1-1 here. Ultan?
Yeah, once again, we match up. I've also gone for a 1-1 here. It's kind of an interesting game. The points you made are perfect as well. Like, Cologne haven't won a game since early November when they bet Hamburg, which is kind of alarming. And I was even listening to, or reading rather, Lucas Kwasniok's points after the Bayern game. And it was a game that played out very similar to their Pokal clash with Bayern, where they just gave them so much trouble for a period of time and were pretty good on the break. But I think just that Bayern team is just so fit under company and just so talented that it's just a matter of time until the dam breaks, you know. And Kwasniok even said that they ran about 3 kilometers more than the entire Bayern team at halftime. So you can only imagine what that would be like in the second half when your legs are probably burning and you're kind of short on defensive personnel as well. I think they had a few injuries in the back line. But having said that, they played pretty well in a game that obviously probably didn't have much pressure on it because they weren't expected to beat Bayern. But you know, you can take something from that set, certainly, and like the likes of Kraus is pretty impressive in midfield and disrupting their play and whatnot. As for Mainz, 4 unbeaten in the Bundesliga, 6 overall in all competitions. Like it's looking pretty well for them. I agree with your point though too that I think they're a little bit maybe off the finished article just yet. Like they have some brilliant players, like the likes of Amiri is probably a top half Bundesliga player, but he's just the goal he scored against Heidenheim for such a terrible match. That goal was a thing of beauty. And it was a fantastic strike. And the likes of like Jason Lee, you can always nearly count on them to pop up with a few goals every year. And Sylvain Widmer seems to be pretty good as well at the moment. For that reason, I just think it'll be kind of played a bit like a relegation game, and maybe both teams will be happy to take a point. Slim on chances, but probably just a gritty kind of arm wrestle that'll end in a stalemate.
Yeah, good analysis there. Then we got a really good-looking game as well, a proper good traditional kind of tie between Hamburg and Gladbach, haven't we? Obviously, the first time we've seen this fixture in a long time, 8 years in the Bundesliga, so this should be a great one for the Halbviers. Go on, Ultan, I'll let you lead out on this one.
Yeah, this one's an interesting one too. Obviously, Hamburg started the season, the year rather the calendar year, with more ill discipline. El Fadli's red card pretty much cost them a leading position, and Freiburg rather came back and stole the game off them and the points. So it's a strange place for HSV at the moment. They seem to be playing pretty well by and large, but these kind of small, maybe inexperienced errors, such as the red cards, are kind of really costing them when it matters. So maybe the break midweek might have done them a bit of favours, and the fact that they can stay at home and allow Gladbach to come to them, doesn't mean they're on the road as much as Leverkusen were when their game with Hamburg was postponed. So this should be kind of interesting. I thought Polanski, after the hammering in Sinsheim, got a fairly frustrated figure. His post-match quotes were kind of quite interesting. I think he said, it was just terrible defending and essentially, nothing what Gladbach stands for. So I think he was quite disappointed with how that went. You would imagine some sort of reaction from his side based on that, because I don't think he would stand for a drubbing of that magnitude. But I think their game totally hinges around the involvement of Tabakovic, and maybe he might be out to kind of punish his old employers. But at the same time, it's a question whether they can get him in the game enough. And I think if they don't, they'll really struggle to find the net, because the rest of the team just isn't really doing it unless it's from the penalty spot and Kevin Dix.
Yeah, it's a really tough one to tip, this, isn't it? It really is. This is one of those that is just, you can make claims for both teams, really, but I agree with you that I've got a feeling that Hamburg have got the edge, maybe. I think it was a torrid display, really, against a very good Hoffenheim side. They won't have to face as much attacking quality. That's the advantage for as that, what in my eyes is one of the best attacks in the league at Hoffenheim at the minute. But Hamburg have, as you say, they play well, but it's just indiscipline. If they didn't have that ill discipline, I guess they'd have an extra, 4 to 6 points on the board, probably. They'd have got at least a point at Hamburg if it wasn't for yet another red card. Freiburg, sorry. They would have got at least a point for me in that game. But obviously fell apart again due to a red card. And ill discipline has been the only thing stopping them from being comfortable mid-table for me, because I think they have looked good in general. They've got a very, very solid team. I think they're still missing a number 9. I don't think Königsdörfer is good enough, but I think they've got a lot of quality other than that. Obviously, Vieira has started to find his feet a little bit. I like the midfield. Lokonga has been a player that's really kind of impressed me at times. Capaldo, I think, has looked good. Obviously, Vuskovic is a player that you've got to mention. He's been one of the stars of the season, really, the 18-year-old. So they've got the makings of a really solid side. They just need to keep 11 men on the pitch. pitch. That's basically the key for them. I think they will. They're still learning, let's be honest. Most of these players haven't played Bundesliga before, at least in a regular basis. So I think they could be ready to go and win this game. I think at home, they've been good in general. They've not lost many games at home in the whole season, really. And I feel as though they're going to get a 2-1 win here. I can see them winning the game. They were very good against Frankfurt in the last home game before the break, and they probably should have won that game. They had a goal millimeters offside from Vieira, which would have been a winner in that one. So I can see them getting over the line in this one and winning 2-1 again.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think I forgot to throw in my tip, but I also went 2-1 Hamburg. Yeah. I do think they'll get over the line against Gladbach.
Yeah. Lawrence as well checking in. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, thanks for the show, guys. First time tuning in. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that kind of thing. But yeah, we're really happy to see you on the show as well. Great. So let's have a look. We've got the top spiel, which is one that we're all going to be looking forward to here. Leipzig, Bayern, isn't it? Let's hope it's a little bit better than the last time these two sides played as well, because, I mean, it was a pretty humbling 6-0 win, wasn't it? Which, to be honest, let a lot of Bundesliga fans down on that day. We were all hoping for a really good curtain raise, and it ended up just being a complete washout, basically, didn't it? But I think we should see a better game. Normally, Leipzig do pretty well at home against Bayern. They're normally, I think last season we saw that 3-3 draw, if you remember that one, which was one of the games of the season last year. We've seen Leipzig cause trouble for Bayern over the years, but I think companies come in and everything's kind of changed since then, hasn't it? And most definitely in the league, he's had the upper hand with 2 big wins at the Allianz Arena against Leipzig since he took over. But he's still not won at the Red Bull Arena, obviously after that 3-3 draw last season. Jan Diomande should be back, I believe, as well. Obviously, Ivory Coast got knocked out last Saturday, so I think this is the perfect game to unleash him again, stick him in there and let him run at that defence. Obviously, a player who has attracted even more interest after a very successful AFCON with Ivory Coast as well, being linked with also Bayern, by the way. Bayern are also supposedly after him, and obviously the Premier League clubs. He came out and said he'd love to play for Liverpool, I think. So I think that's going to get eyes on Merseyside quite excited as well over the next few weeks. But he's definitely going to stay through January. I don't see any worries about him leaving before January, to be honest. I think he's got another 6 to 18 months to enjoy in Leipzig. Yeah. In general, Leipzig obviously come into this game on the back of a very, very routine 2-0 win over Freiburg. I think Romelu being back is a big bonus for them as well. I think he obviously got on the score sheets again. They missed him at the back end of 2025. They really did, because I never felt as though Harder really filled his boots that well, to be honest with you. I think Romelu, they always look better with him in the team. So I think they got Romelu and Diomande back fit and firing, then they've got a chance in this game.
Definitely.
Bayern, the issue with Bayern is that there's not an awful lot of rotation going on with this team. I think that it could be possible that we start to see them get a bit leggy at some point, because they had to work hard for the win in Koeln, which they might not have thought they would have done, to be honest. They had to work a lot harder for that than what they were probably expecting. They come into this game against what is one of the biggest rivals nowadays, really, against Leipzig. It's a club that they don't particularly like from a ideological view. Should be a good game, this one. I am going to go for goals again, similar to the Hoffenheim versus Leverkusen. I'm going to go for goals, but I think just the way things are going for Bayern, Elise, Diaz, Kane, probably Leonard Carl will come back in after being rested against Koeln. That is just, for me, the best attacking four in Europe right now. And I think they're going to cause problems for a Leipzig defence who haven't overwhelmed me in recent weeks. So I'm going to go for a 4-2 win for Die Bayern. What do you think?
Yeah, it's funny when this game happened at the start of the year, it kind of cast my mind back to, I've always been a Bundesliga fan. For the best part of my entire adult life. But I remember being sat in my friend's living room who was a Liverpool fan, and I think Man United had just beaten Arsenal in the opening game of the season 8-2, and without even saying anything else, he just said, that's the league done, Man United have it. So that's exactly how I felt when Bayern Munich gave Leipzig a bit of a shaking.
That's going back some years now, and I remember that one too. I guess 15 years or so would that have been?
Yeah, 2011 maybe or something. Even before that, maybe.
I guess it was the back end of the Ferguson years, wasn't it?
Yeah. yeah. Just a shock result, and I think that one was no different. Back at the start of this year, I after maybe a couple of games, I kind of felt that Bayern can easily go invincible for the season, and I still stick by that. I just think their quality and I mean, like it or lump it, their financial strength is clearly superior as well, and it stands to show in the team, whereas all the other clubs have kind of lost key players. But the game is a game, and that's football. It's modern football. I don't think the result will change from the start of the year. I've gone for a 3-1 win for Bayern Munich. I think Diamande being back, as you mentioned, is a big plus for Leipzig. Added to the fact that Konrad Laimer has just picked up a calf injury and he's expected to be out for around a month. So I'm really interested to see that battle, because I assume Diamande will be deployed on the left, up against a Bayern defence that will be without Boe, Stanisic and Laimer. So unless Kimmich is back in time, which would be an absolute blessing from a Bayern Munich point of view, there could be a serious mismatch on the left wing, which could maybe give Leipzig some ounce of a chance there. But to touch on the points you made, like the likes of Diaz and Olise are just on fire at the moment. Even in the Cologne game, they mightn't necessarily rip them up like they did against Wolfsburg, but just I think it might have been the second or third goal even, where Diaz just cut into the left against weary legs, just mazed his way through across the box without a hand being put on him, and just set it up for Carl to slot in. It's frightening really at the moment. And it's a sign of a good team when Harry Kane, who's just such a decorated goal scorer, hasn't really been brilliant in the last 2 games. I say brilliant in inverted commas because he's still phenomenal. But like the other lads are just stepping up to the plate and delivering. So I've gone for a 3-1 Bayern Munich win.
Yeah, it's hard to look beyond them against anyone at the minute, isn't it? Especially with the fresh legs after the break. They look absolutely brilliant the last couple of games, really. So yeah, let's move on to the Sunday doubleheader. Obviously, the first one being probably the form team after Bayern. Obviously, the form team, the best of the rest at the minute, really. VfB Stuttgart hosting Union Berlin, who have also been going quite well too this season. What can you say about the VfB? I mean, that 4-1 win was a real kind of what would you describe it as? It was a tension grabber, really, wasn't it? When they won 4-1 in Leverkusen, especially that first half, it was just, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just goal, and so many good performances in there for the VfB. And then obviously to go and follow that up with a much grittier 3-2 win over Frankfurt as well, another Champions League or Europa, well, you'd say Champions League rival, really, wouldn't you? It was just massive, really, to get 6 points from those 2 games against probably your closest 2 rivals for a top 4 berth. It's just enormous, basically, and that's going to give them huge confidence. As you say, they are missing Kanoos still to the AFCON. He's going to play the AFCON final the same day, I believe, but I don't think they're missing him that much, which is quite clear after the 7 goals in 2 games against top teams. So they're not exactly missing him. I think Chris Furyk has come back into form. That's been a big point as well. I think he's been really good in both of the games. I mean, what can you say? Dennis Undav is absolutely back again now. He's back to his absolute top form of the year when they finished Vizemeister, when they finished second place, when he was just a low knee at that point. But he is absolutely back. He's on to 10 goals already this season now, despite missing a decent period through injury. They're just looking so good. I think another man we've got to mention is Nate as well. I think he obviously got his first goal with the winner against Frankfurt. He's been the most improved player in that squad for me this season. Just superb performances. Defensively, they've also looked solid. I think Hendricks and Szabo have formed a decent partnership. Conceded 2 against Frankfurt, which would have been a little bit disappointing. But if you look at the XG, they massively outperformed their XG, Frankfurt, in that game. They only actually got, I think, 0.7 or 0.8 XG. So that suggests that, Stuttgart is still doing pretty well to keep chances to a premium against them. So, yeah, you're really looking like hot favourites. I think another thing we've got to mention for this one is that they've had 2 days extra break. A little bit more than 2 days, actually, because, I mean, Stuttgart played the early kickoff as well, if you're being fussy, on Tuesday night. That's huge in the Bundesliga, a league where teams just aren't used to playing like in such a regular way, especially Union, who haven't been in Europe for a couple of years now, have they? So For me, all signs, like literally every sign in the book, is pointing to a home win here. And I just think Union will be a little bit leggy. They don't have the biggest squad. I mean, they've got Burke and Anza playing tonight, who are probably their two best attacking threats at the minute. So will they even rest a few players in this game? I don't know. But I think all signs are pointing to a 3-0 VfB win for me. Ultan?
Yeah, once again, we line up perfectly. I've also gone for a 3-0 win for VfB. They just look like the next best form team behind Bayern Munich at the moment, especially since 2026 began. As you mentioned, Undav, I think about 5 goal contributions in his last 4 games. Furyk has kind of shown his form of old as well. And Jamie Leveling, I think he deserves a massive mention. Like, when he's getting kind of picked up, garnering attention from the Premier League and the likes of Bournemouth, I think it says a lot about how he's been playing, and he's been just playing at breakneck speed lately. He's offering so much for their attack. And as you said, they're not really missing El Khanous either. Like, I would have thought that would have been a huge loss, and I was kind of interested to see how they'd cope with that, but it's not been an issue whatsoever. Sebastian Hoeneß has his team. He's happy with the team. There's no need to change it, despite the English Evoca and the fast turnover of games. Why change a winning team? You don't change a winning formula. And as you said, even the goals they conceded to Frankfurt were kind of a bit, they weren't exactly like, well, one was a bit of a lucky goal in the sense that Christensen's header just kind of looped up from the front post over Nubel's head and in. I'd say the odds of that coming off a million times would be 1. And the second Frankfurt goal was just a beautiful move down the left, and the Moroccan youngster with a massive surname, double barrel surname, which I'm not going to try, took that away. So, I think, and the fact that they came from behind in that game too speaks volumes, and they blew Leverkusen away only a couple of days before that. I just can't see anything other than a resounding win. As for Union, less time to recover, as you said, less personnel to call upon, and they've also struggled a bit as well, I think, in terms of output. Although they did have that little peak just at the tail end of 2025, but it's hard to really see if that can continue. Baumgart's got a new contract, and obviously he'll be happy with that, and there seem to be a bit of stability now in Koepenick, but I still can't see anything other than a Stuttgart win, and fairly comfortable at that as well.
Yeah, without doubt. I think Lawrence agrees with us as well. He says that, there's still 0-0 approaching half-time in Augsburg, and it's very unlikely they're going to get anything from this game with the form that VfB are on. I just don't see it at all, especially with the turnaround. As you say, they've had more than 2 days on them before the last game. Plus, VfB have a bigger squad if they need to make a few subs and rotations as well. With Demirovic has just come back in as well. So everything's just looking point to the VfB right now. They've got a stacked squad, a European standard squad, and they're really starting to show it now as well. So, let's finish off with the final game. I'm going to let you lead out on Augsburg-Freiburg, Ultan.
Yeah, it's another interesting fixture. Not the most straightforward one to call either, I would say. Freiburg, rather. Freiburg are obviously had that win against Hamburg, I should say. And then they kind of collapsed against Leipzig in the second half the other night, which is a bit tough. Augsburg, on the other hand, only have 2 days to recover from today till Sunday. So that kind of puts a bit of pressure on them, similar to Union. It's slightly unfair, but that's just the nature of the beast. You can either complain about it or else you can get on with it, I think. And it feels harsh to say when they kind of have limited quality in their sides, but that's just the way modern football is. It's condensed. It'll be interesting to see Gregoritsch going up against his former employers. I wonder, can he maybe inflict a bit of pain on the Breisgauers? He was never exactly the most clinical striker, but he always seemed to kind of get second preferential options behind Lucas Toller and stuff, which might have maybe irked him over the years. So there could be a bit of fire in the belly there. But I do think maybe the star player between the two teams at the moment has to be Yohan Manzambi. I just think he's electric, the Swiss midfielder for Freiburg. And I think that could be the difference maker if it was to go in the way of Schuster's team. But I do find this game hard to call, and I've kind of sat on the fence here with a 1-1 draw. I just think both teams should generally cancel each other out. Augsburg probably want to bounce back after the heavy defeat to Gladbach, and Freiburg, I think, would probably be reasonably content with a point on the road.
Yeah, I think that's a fair tip. But For me, I'm just absolutely not optimistic about Augsburg at all at the moment. Like I'm just looking as you were speaking there at the statistics as well from the game, and they've only managed 0.06 xG in a whole half against Union at home. I mean, when it rains, it pours in football, you know. And to say their attack is blunt at the moment is the understatement of the century. I mean, they barely even create half chances, let alone chances. You know, it's grim. I mean, they've only scored, obviously, after that famous, I mean, completely freak 2-0 win over Leverkusen that they managed to get in Bound's first game. They've not even scored a goal in 3.5 matches now since then. And to be honest, have they really even created a big chance in those games? I'm not sure, to be honest. Okay, they created a few half chances at the back end of the Gladbach game when the game was completely over. But, I mean, we all knew the result. They couldn't even put them away. So, and as you say, a woeful first half again against Union, where they just basically created absolutely zilch in the whole half. Things just don't look good for the FCA at all, like really don't. And for me, this is the most like a relegation team I've seen the FCA in years, probably since like that year when Nuremberg got relegated and they stayed up with like 30 points or something like that. This is the worst Augsburg side I've seen in 7-8 years, I would say. I'm very worried for them, and I think Freiburg are going to sense a win here. As you say, they've had an extra 2 days break actually as well. Let's not forget that. They're not playing scintillating football this year, Freiburg, but they're still a solid side at the end of the day. I don't think it's the best Freiburg we've seen in the recent years at all. Last year, they were much better in general. But as you say, they've still got flashes of quality in there, you know, and Manzambi could easily provide it. They've got threats from the wings with Kubler and Gunter, who are regular threats in those positions. They're still missing that like top level striker. We all know that, but they've always managed to find a way to get through. And I think Hurler isn't for everyone, but he's a scrapper, you know.
Yeah.
He's a scrapper. And I can actually see Freiburg nicking a kind of really scrappy away win here. Actually, I've gone for a 1-0 Freiburg win in this one, just to kind of
you have to feel for Augsburg fans a little bit. I think like just the way the club is being run the last while. I mean, you know, they just tore up out after a pretty good season, which kind of dropped out of European contention in the last maybe 5 games, all in the idea of this kind of pretense of making the club appealing for youth and stuff, and bring in Wagner, give him the chop, and then it's just all over the place. It's desperate really from their point of view. So I could totally understand Freiburg nicking it this week.
Yeah, when we were there, I mean, there was a lot of discontent even at that time, and I think things have got worse since then. Really, with just not scoring anywhere near enough goals, just boring, kind of aimless football, really, and poor signings overall. They've signed players that are like Zweite Liga standard, hoping they were going to be top, you know. And as you say, the whole decision to get rid of Torup has just backfired, unfortunately, for them. But yeah, I definitely see Freiburg nicking a kind of scrappy win in this one. Anyway, so yeah, that rounds up the weekend's predictions. So yeah, remember that if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. Don't forget, we're not only a YouTube channel, we're also a podcast as well. So check us out on Spotify and Apple. And don't forget, we're also active on social media as well, X, Instagram, and Threads, and Blue Sky. So, yeah, don't forget to check out all of the matches this weekend. Obviously, check out the fantasy show that Ultan also took part in as well. And we'll be back to see you again on Monday on the other side, as they say. So thanks a lot again to Ultan. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you there. Ciao, ciao, guys. Bye-bye.